On the night my wife exclaimed, "Leave my house! You no longer belong here!" A downpour obscured the end of my driveway. At 51, I was a retired detective, conversant with talks that dissuaded jumpers and encounters with killers in interrogation rooms for 2 decades without flinching. Yet there I stood on the porch of the home I'd paid for, drenched, clutching only my car keys after 17 years of life that were torn apart in less than 4 minutes. I made no pleas, no protests. Instead, I merely turned and walked to my truck. 3 hours later, my phone rang with the police on the line. Upon hearing their words, I comprehended something I'd long suspected. Truth doesn't knock gently, it bursts through the door. My name is Gerald Thorne, and this recounts the night I lost everything, only to learn I never truly possessed what I believed I did. If narratives such as this resonate with you, if you've ever felt like you did everything right yet found yourself in the rain, click subscribe immediately, leave a comment below. Share your single-word emotion while watching this. And if someone you know could benefit from hearing this story today, pass it along. Now let's delve into it. I hail from Clarksville, Tennessee, a town where everyone knows your father's name and your high school football achievements are discussed at church on Sundays. My dad worked at the Hemlock Semiconductor plant for 32 years, while my mom cleaned houses on the northern side of town. We weren't impoverished per se, but we were intimately acquainted with the specific math of barely enough, the kind where you know the exact week when the electric bill is due and adjust your movements accordingly. At age 23, I opted for the Clarksville Police Department, not in pursuit of fanfare or bragging rights at taverns. My motivation stemmed from a deeply rooted conviction, the conviction that communities could be safer, that predators could be apprehended, and that answering the call to help during chaos was a noble endeavor. For 22 years, I faithfully carried out this role, engaging in patrol, investigations, and homicide work. I handled cases that would haunt a typical individual for months. I shared heartrending news with mothers, informing them their sons wouldn't be returning home. My evidence files were so meticulously constructed that defense lawyers capitulated prior to trial. I excelled at my profession, exceeding expectations. I was patient, thorough, and never hasty in reaching conclusions. I relied on this patience, this habit of collecting everything before acting, to safeguard me. Unfortunately, I was mistaken about that. At age 47, I retired with a moderate pension, an accolade from the mayor, and the tranquil awareness that I had spent more years safeguarding strangers than constructing my own life. My first marriage concluded when my son Tyler was 4. His mother Renee and I were merely individuals who came together for inappropriate reasons, and fortunately, we recognized this before inflicting excessive harm. We effectively raised Tyler. Now at 27, he works in Nashville within the realm of supply chain logistics, a field I'm still unclear about, but he takes pride in it. As do I crossed paths with Pamela Dalton Webb when Tyler was 9 and I was 34. She was 31, employed as a hospital billing coordinator at Gateway Medical Center on Dunlop Lane. She had the characteristic of having brown hair, keen eyes, a laugh that echoed throughout rooms without apology. She had a daughter named Brittany from a previous relationship, who was 6 years old at the time. Carter Webb, Brittany's biological father, had been absent since she was 2, with no legal custody, no financial support, and no contact. I entered the situation thoughtfully, as I had a son of my own, understanding the impact of an inconsistent parent. I vowed to be different for Brittany. For years, I coached her soccer team at 8, attended every school play, even minor roles in the back row, helped with SAT preparation, drove to college visits in Nashville and Murfreesboro, sat through information sessions where admissions counselors repeated transformative 17 times in 40 minutes. I smiled and nodded as Brittany's excitement mattered more. Despite not legally adopting her, I respected Pamela's decision on the matter. Brittany was required to maintain her web name for identity purposes, and I chose not to challenge it. Love, I believed, didn't necessitate formal documentation. However, I should have recognized that Pamela's bond with her daughter was structured in a manner I couldn't comprehend. Although I was beneficial and accepted, I never played a pivotal role. The significance of this disparity turned out to be greater than I initially thought. In April 2007, we exchanged vows at a modest ceremony in Dunbar Cave State Park, east of Clarksville, with around 40 attendees. Tyler was part of the entourage, and Brittany served as a bridesmaid. It was a delightful day, one filled with genuine joy. We purchased a house on Peacher's Mill Road, a spacious four-bedroom brick colonial that appeared stable and intended for establishing a lasting legacy. I contributed the down payment. We shared the mortgage expenses from then on. Most of the yard work, repairs, and weekend projects were managed by me. For years, Pamela managed the social calendar, school communications, and the intricate household logistics with two children at different life stages, making it function effectively. As Tyler and Brittany moved out, Pamela and I discovered we still enjoyed each other's company in our vast home alone, a small miracle after 17 years together. However, I failed to notice a gradual change until it was upon me. 8 months ago, Brittany's circumstances altered. At 23, she held a steady job as an assistant property manager in Nashville's Germantown area, providing enough income for her rent and car payment. But her employer restructured, affecting her employment status. Corporate term for mass layoffs, and Brittany, among many others in leasing staff, was terminated. Upon returning home, she found solace with her family. I aim for precision in expressing my emotions, given time to reflect on them. Initially, it wasn't anger that filled me, rather sympathy towards Brittany, a 23-year-old who had lost her job. Of course, she was always welcome to return home. After all, families support each other. When I informed Pamela of this, I meant every word. However, I wasn't prepared for the subtle yet profound change in our house dynamic following Brittany's arrival. It didn't happen abruptly or loudly, but gradually, like a creeping tide rising steadily. You don't realize your feet are wet until the water reaches your knees. Brittany and her mother had always shared a close bond, which was not uncommon or abnormal. However, their relationship held a unique intimacy that became more palpable with her return. In Brittany's presence, discussions would often halt upon my entrance. Not overtly or dramatically, but subtly, a pause, a topic change, an unexpected focus on a screen. I convinced myself it was merely my imagination. As a seasoned detective, I had spent 2 decades deciphering rooms, yet I clung to the hope that I was wrong. Pamela began adjusting her hours. Though she'd been working remotely due to the pandemic and hospital billing transitioning digitally, her schedule became increasingly flexible. Yet, she started spending more time in her home office, keeping the door shut. When I knocked, there was a slight delay, the kind that suggests someone is closing something on a screen. I observed this detail, stored it away, waiting for further proof before making a judgment. Habits of old times. Brittany appeared amiable, yet not overtly affectionate. She assisted with household chores and prepared dinner on 2 days a week. Her politeness mirrored that of a neighbor maintaining cordiality, not a coach who had guided you for 3 years in soccer. I consciously avoided interpreting too deeply. I reasoned that a 23-year-old, rejoining her parents' home following job loss, was dealing with a genuine struggle. The embarrassment of withdrawal, the intricate feelings stirred by resuming a childhood bedroom as an adult, and the disconcerting identity shift of depending on parents thought to be left behind, these were difficulties I acknowledged. I gave her leniency. I respected her space when it seemed desired and engaged in dialogue when it appeared inviting. I strived to be helpful without being overbearing. However, a recurring observation troubled me. Her situation, which I attributed to the complexities of rejoining family after job loss, kept resurfacing in my mind. At night, when insomnia took over and silence filled the house, my mind would drift to reconstructing events, searching for discrepancies or missing pieces. Brittany, though reserved, was always warm. We shared a comfortableness rooted in our long-shared living space. As a teenager, she confided in me about car troubles, sought advice on college essays, and texted a flurry of exclamation points before even contacting her mother upon receiving her first job offer. That familiarity vanished abruptly, without warning, the day she moved back. It was as if something had been disconnected. I couldn't help but ponder what might have caused this change. In the years she resided in Murfreesboro and Nashville, my actions or words or lack thereof might have affected the way she viewed me. I couldn't pinpoint what I did wrong. Since I was clueless, I assumed it was a problem I had to address. I made more effort, became more affectionate, inquired about her job applications, friends, and future plans. However, her responses were polite but brief, indicating she wanted the conversation to end. I should have recognized this earlier, but I was too close to the situation. Often, the person most skilled at reading a room is the one least able to read their own home environment. 6 weeks later, Brittany confided in her mother about me, and I'm unsure of the exact details. I can gather the essence from Pamela's outburst that night. as well as what Tyler learned from his sources. The main point is that Brittany informed Pamela I had said something derogatory to her. Reference to her biological father, something meant to make her feel unwelcome at home. According to Pamela, who spoke with finality, I supposedly told Brittany, and I quote this for clarity, that she was merely Carter Webb's luggage. She claimed I added that true families aren't maintained due to obligation. I had never uttered those words. They had never crossed my mind. In the span of 17 years caring for that girl, I had never once made her feel like a burden. I possessed soccer photos, SAT preparation notes, college visit receipts, and a box full of 18 years' worth of birthday cards in the closet, should anyone care to look. But Pamela didn't question me about any of that. It was a Tuesday in September when she confronted me with this accusation. I clearly recall the date, September 9th. That day, after spending an afternoon volunteering at the Tennessee State Veterans Cemetery along Ringgold Road, I entered our home through the back door into the kitchen. There, Pamela stood motionless, a sign that she had been preparing something. Brittany was seated at the table, which should have alerted me. The situation called for either a witness or a participant. "We need to talk," Pamela declared. Those 4 words are familiar to anyone in a long-term relationship, especially when they carry a heavy significance. Not the casual, "we need to discuss Thanksgiving plans" tone. The other kind, the weighted one, the decisive kind. I took a seat, remained composed, and inquired about her intentions. 14 minutes passed as Pamela recounted an incident allegedly involving me and her daughter. Since I have honed my timekeeping skills from years in law enforcement, I knew the exact duration. Her account, initially simple, expanded with details, emotions, and depth as she spoke. Brittany silently nodded at the table, a gesture of acknowledgement of her pain being conveyed accurately. When Pamela finished, I asserted, "That's not true." Brittany then revealed what you had told me. "I comprehend your statement. Nevertheless, it remains untrue." The question that lingered in my mind was why she would fabricate such a thing. That question, unanswered at the moment, stood out to me because I could not convincingly explain the reason while standing in my own kitchen, confronted with 17 years of proof on one side and a solitary accusation on the other. Pamela was already convinced by Brittany's version, stating, "Brittany wouldn't lie about something like this." "You needn't defend yourself," I stated. "I wish to discuss with Brittany personally. She doesn't owe you an explanation. I'm not demanding one. I'm seeking a dialogue, Gerald." Pamela's tone shifted, turning icier. "I've pondered this for weeks, even before now. The way you speak of her, the way you regard her sometimes, as if she doesn't truly belong. Pam, no." And then her voice cracked, not with tears, but in that tone that implies a long-held tension has finally found release. "You've never fully accepted that she is my daughter. You've always kept her at bay. You've always made it clear that Tyler was your true child and she was merely—" "Halt. Leave my home." Pamela spoke calmly, not shouting. "At present, you are no longer welcome here." I looked at Brittany, holding her gaze for a prolonged moment. She maintained eye contact with me for precisely 2 seconds before looking at the table. At that moment, I realized this was not a discussion, but a resolution. I responded, "All right." I retrieved my keys from the hook near the door and walked towards the truck. Pamela emerged onto the porch then, and it was at this point that the shouting began, not directly at me, but into the tempest that had formed during our time indoors, the rain pouring down on Peacher's Mill Road in torrents. She was uttering phrases about 17 years, which meant nothing to me, about men who claim space and label it as love, about how she should have realized this long ago. I merely walked to my truck, got in, and remained seated until her voice was drowned by the storm. I drove to my brother's house on Ringgold Road. My older brother Davis is 54, runs a landscaping business, and has a spare room that he's never made me feel uncomfortable about using. I informed him of the situation that had unfolded. He served me a bourbon and seated opposite in his kitchen, saying little, which was precisely what I required. At 11:47 that night, my phone rang, displaying the number of Clarksville PD. Even in retirement, old habits persist. The sight of that particular area code at midnight sets a former detective's nerves on edge, like a hunting dog that freezes upon scent. I picked up the call immediately. "Are you Gerald Thorne?" "Yes, I am." "This is Sergeant Melissa Ockhaffer from Clarksville PD. I'm sorry to disturb you at this hour, Mr. Thorne. We are currently at Gateway Medical Center on Dunlop Lane. There's been an incident involving your stepdaughter, Brittany Webb." My initial thought was that she might have been harmed. An accident. A tragedy. I was already moving swiftly to calculate my route from Davis House to Dunlop Lane. Is she all right? I inquired. A brief pause followed. She is physically unharmed, yes. I must ask you some forthcoming queries, and I want to be transparent with you. This concerns a report submitted earlier this evening. What type of report is it? It's more extensive this time. A financial crimes report has led to Brittany Webb being brought in for questioning regarding a sequence of illicit transfers from a joint account shared by you and your wife, Pamela Thorne. These transfers started roughly 11 weeks back, totaling nearly $42,000. The kitchen at Davis' house was unusually silent. I could hear the rain persisting outside. "Repeat that," I said. Sergeant Ockhaffer repeated it. "Remain calm, maintain professionalism, $42,000, 11 weeks. Fraudulent transfers." I asked for the source of the discovery. The unusual account activity was flagged by a fraud monitoring system 3 days ago, which we were notified about later. This evening, following a compliance review by the financial institution. Upon inquiry, the transactions were linked to an account under Brittany Webb's name. She was contacted about an hour ago. There was a pause. "Mr. Thorne, your wife Pamela Thorne is also present at the station for voluntary questioning about whether she authorized these transfers. Did she?" I inquired. "I can't disclose specifics about the ongoing investigation, sir, but given that it's your account, I thought you should know a report has been filed," the officer said. "We will contact you officially tomorrow." I thanked Sergeant Ockhaffer. I placed the phone on Davis's kitchen table. Davis looked at me from across the room. "What transpired?" he asked. I told him. He fell silent for a moment before asking, "How much was it?" $42,000, I replied. 11 weeks, I added. "It has been 11 weeks since she returned home. Here's what I can verify and what I have deduced. About a week after Brittany returned to the Peachers Mill Road residence, transfers started from our joint account with Pamela. These transfers initially amounted to $200, then $300, and were later transferred into an account in Brittany's name at another bank. The frequency and size of these transfers escalated over time. By the time a fraud alert was activated, a total of $41,870 had been moved. This is confirmed information. The transfers demanded two-factor authentication linked to Pamela's phone number, suggesting either Pamela authorized them or Brittany had access to Pamela's phone. Given their close relationship and shared living arrangement, it's plausible that Brittany could have accessed Pamela's phone. In response to inquiries, Brittany first asserted that the funds were gifts from her mother. Contrastingly, Pamela, during separate interrogations, was inconsistent with her narrative about what she had and hadn't sanctioned. Although not definitively proven, it appears that Pamela may have had some knowledge of the situation, the extent of which, as well as when she became aware, I cannot confirm. What I can reveal is that the sequence of events, Brittany's accusation against me, Pamela's sudden insistence on my departure from the house, my unexpected expulsion on a stormy night coinciding with the police's ongoing financial review, these events are not mere coincidences. My hypothesis, and I stress, this is speculative. Brittany wanted me removed from the house so that Pamela could account for the missing funds without my presence to challenge her narrative. Alternatively, or perhaps both, Brittany wanted me out of the house in case a fraud investigation ensued, to avoid my presence during its arrival. The claim that I referred to Brittany as Carter Webb's baggage was fabricated, a malicious invention intended solely to elicit Pamela's maternal defense for her daughter and portray me as an unkind, disregarding stepfather. It appears the story was crafted to make Pamela the hero, defending her child from an uncaring spouse. I've pondered whether she knew the allegation was baseless. The truth is, I cannot say. What I am aware of is that she accepted it without inquiring for clarification, without awaiting evidence, and without granting me the same leniency she had extended over 17 years of soccer games, SAT tutorials, college consultations, and mortgage payments. This reveals something to me. It doesn't necessarily shed light on the accusation, but it does tell me something about our 17-year marriage. That particular week, I avoided Peachers Mill Road. As expected, Sergeant Ockhaffer phoned me the next morning. I proved helpful, supplying all the required materials, financial records, access to relevant documents, and a chronology of events accurately recounted from my extensive experience in detective work. I knew what they needed and understood how to contribute without interfering. In fact, I understood how to contribute without interfering. I understood how to contribute without interfering. I understood how to contribute inappropriately if necessary. My legal representative, a woman named Diane Kessler who had handled my estate planning years ago and also dealt with civil litigation, reached out to Pamela's attorney within 48 hours regarding the marital assets. This dialogue, I gathered, brought clarity for all parties involved. 4 days post our encounter on the porch, Pamela phoned me. Her sobs echoed those of someone who had only then realized their actions' consequences. "Gerald," she started, "I wasn't aware of everything." "Everything," I replied. A moment of silence passed. I knew Brittany had taken a loan and promised to repay it. I believed I would inform you and we'd handle it together. However, the debt escalated beyond my expectations, and she warned me that if you discovered it, you'd. What exactly did she warn me? Pamela remained silent for a while. She admitted that you had been contemplating divorce and using this loan as a tool to ensure I'd end up with nothing in the division of assets. I stayed quiet for some time. "Pam," I said at last, "how long have you suspected a potential divorce from me?" "I'm not suspecting a divorce from you, but you thought I was planning one. You believed I was searching for an excuse to leave, and this debt served as that excuse to ensure I'd be left with nothing. You thoughtlessly assumed I would speak harshly to your daughter without verifying it from me first. She was unable to dispute that assumption because she had no response prepared. It turned out that the accusation was entirely false, she admitted later. Initially, she believed I might have implied something similar, though not in those exact words or even close to them. However, she now recognizes this. If only you had asked me about it then, I could have clarified the situation earlier. I said during our call that ended amicably, neither angrily nor accusingly, but with a shared fatigue that marked the end of our recent events. My son, Tyler, filled me in on the details later. He had rushed up from Nashville when he heard what transpired and waited for me in a Cracker Barrel parking lot on Wilma Rudolph Boulevard for 2 hours while I consumed biscuits and attempted to comprehend the past week's sequence of events. Tyler had access to information that I lacked, specifically his stepsister's social circle. Kayla, who used to be Brittany's roommate in Nashville before her layoff, was the one who shared the details with Tyler. Apparently, what Kayla disclosed completed the picture. The layoff wasn't entirely unexpected for Brittany. She had been aware of it for approximately 6 weeks before it transpired. During this period, she found herself in a serious financial predicament. This included an outstanding personal loan from the previous year, growing credit card debt, and a lease on a car that her income couldn't reasonably sustain. When she lost her job, she owed around $14,000 across various debts. Moving to a new home provided her with housing, but it failed to alleviate her underlying debt issues. In her first week back, she reevaluated her circumstances and sought a solution. Her recourse was to use the joint account. Kayla claimed Brittany had told her this personally, and did so with an unsettling, calculated tone that troubled Kayla enough for her to previously dismiss it as a joke. However, according to Kayla, this accusation was entirely false. Brittany allegedly told Kayla, "If Gerald discovers the money before I can rectify it, I need Mom on my side, not his, so I need Mom to be angry at him." This is the gist of her strategy. This is the entire equation. The aim was to make Mother angry with Gerald, remove Gerald from the house, and achieve this gradually. What Brittany hadn't factored in, and it seems this is where the plan unraveled unexpectedly, was the fraud alert. She believed she had more time. The transfers were intended to stay within set limits. Financial institutions have become adept at recognizing patterns, causing seemingly harmless transfers to appear suspicious when viewed together. The investigation progressed swifter than Brittany anticipated, leaving her unprepared when authorities inquired. I won't share the details of her defense, as it didn't hold up. Brittany was prosecuted for all charges due to her actions. She disclosed the destination of the funds and admitted primarily using them to repay debts, while a portion covered hidden expenses she wished to conceal from her mother. No foreign account or accomplice were involved. The situation wasn't as simple as a crime. It was more about a desperate individual taking a path that caused harm to those she cared for. Brittany collaborated fully with the investigation. Diane Kessler collaborated with the district attorney's office. Since Brittany was cooperative, had no prior criminal record, and agreed to a structured restitution plan, Pamela consented to shoulder part of the responsibility. Brittany paid the remaining portion over a series of years. The case was eventually dismissed through a diversion program, provided Brittany met the terms. I contributed to that decision. My suggestion was for her to rectify her mistake without ruining her life. People have questioned me about this, whether I regret it or believe she deserved harsher punishment. I told Diane Kessler the same as I tell you now. For 22 years, I witnessed the criminal justice system transform people from one regrettable decision into those with nothing left to lose. Brittany made a tragic mistake. She caused me harm. She concocted a falsehood that ended my marriage and left me alone on my porch in the rain. But she's 23 and not a lifelong offender. She acted impulsively and did something disastrous. I won't claim to have forgiven her entirely, but I chose mercy due to its suitability, not because I felt compassionate. Pamela and I finalized our divorce. The process was amicable. Our house was sold, and the profits were distributed based on the formula devised by Diane, her attorney. This division left me with sufficient funds for a down payment on a smaller property situated off Tiny Town Road in Clarksville's northwest region, a two-bedroom home with a west-facing porch and a spacious yard suitable for my long-planned vegetable garden. Occasionally, I engage in civil discussions with Pamela. Our interactions are mainly perfunctory. The question I pose to her lingers in my mind. How long have you feared me? I believe this question encapsulates the true narrative of our marriage. Not the accusation, not the deceit, not that fateful night on the porch. The true account is that at some point, I lost Pamela's faith in me to the extent she stopped asking even the most basic questions, and I failed to recognize it. This is a shortcoming, I acknowledge. I want to share something with you that I've revealed only to Tyler and Davis, as I believe it is the utmost truth in this entire narrative, and it demands to be spoken aloud. The night of the storm, standing on that porch soaked, while listening to Pamela assert that I was an outsider in my own home, I was not taken aback. I was not startled because I had anticipated it. Not the exact details, not the betrayal by Brittany or the fraud or the late phone call, but I had sensed for months that something was amiss, that the foundations of our marriage were unstable, and I acted as usual. I waited for further proof. I justified my need to be certain before drawing a conclusion, emulating a detective's diligence and perhaps a man's way of postponing facing something painful until it becomes inevitable. I am 51 years old. In a vegetable garden, I will begin cultivation. My son in Nashville contacts me every Sunday reliably. There is a brother on Ringgold Road who shares bourbon and refrains from probing excessively. Retirement benefits and a western-facing porch await, along with 17 years of moments to guide as I see fit. The reality is this: I was not an ideal spouse. I didn't show up when it mattered the most, and I could have inquired more about Pamela's thoughts. I might have advocated for discussions we delayed. I could have been more vigilant, but I never regarded her or our daughter as a burden. I coached soccer and drove her to college, and I was present. And when the truth eventually surfaced, it did so unceremoniously, inconveniently, and at an unwelcome hour, a phone call at midnight amidst a storm, confirming what I had secretly suspected but had avoided acknowledging aloud. Certain individuals fabricate tales out of fear, necessity, or convenience, even when facing someone directly at a kitchen table and shifting blame onto another. Over 2 decades, I've encountered all these types during interrogations. A piece of wisdom every detective eventually grasps: lies incur greater costs than truth ever would. This is an unwavering rule with no exceptions. The only factor that varies is the delay before the price is paid. Brittany faced her bill at 11:47 on a Tuesday in September. On the same night, so did I, standing on a wet porch on Peacher's Mill Road. Pamela's account is still outstanding, but it will eventually be settled. Time may postpone some bills, but they never disappear, they always arrive. 3 months after moving into Tiny Town Road house, I decided to cultivate a garden: tomatoes, peppers, and squash. Lacking a clear strategy, I planted them anyway out of principle. On a Saturday, Tyler arrived from Nashville and we constructed a raised garden bed in the afternoon, both of us wielding shovels amidst the Tennessee heat with minimal conversation, a silence typical when men work comfortably together. At one point he asked, his gaze fixed elsewhere, "Are you all right, Dad?" I gave it thought, acknowledging his worthiness. "Yes," I replied. "I believe so." He nodded and continued digging. "She should have asked you that night," he said. "She should have simply inquired." "Yes," I agreed, "she should have. Do you think she didn't because—" I leaned on my shovel, taking in the yard's west-facing light, long and golden in late afternoon. "Somewhere along the way," I said, "she stopped trusting that the answer would be what she desired." Tyler pondered this. "That's her fault," he decided. "Partially," I admitted. "Yes. We completed the garden bed as the sun began to set. I prepared dinner afterwards. On the porch afterwards, we observed the shifting light across the yard and conversed about trivial matters: his job, a woman he was seeing, a potential trip to Colorado in autumn. At some point, he remarked, "You'll be fine." "I know," I replied, finding solace on that western balcony overlooking my newly cultivated vegetable garden, and with the visit of my son from Nashville who assisted me in its creation. In this moment, this unremarkable Tuesday evening, I recognized the proof I had been seeking. Not the investigation into fraud, not the divorce documents, not the late-night phone calls. This, a porch dinner, the lingering light was the confirmation I'd long awaited. Gerald Thorne, aged 51, this was the truth I'd amassed unknowingly over 17 years. A truth that belonged to me and could neither be stolen nor distorted by deception. A former detective residing on Tiny Town Road, Clarksville, Tennessee, assures everyone he's okay. It's not the deception or falsehood that hurts him, but the fact that after 17 years, his spouse never inquired, "Is this true?" Just a single question would have sufficed. He reflects that many of us find ourselves either in the role of the unasked or the one who doesn't ask. We tend to accept what is conveniently believable and shield those we already protect. Often this loyalty stems not from trust but fear. If this narrative resonates with someone in your personal experiences, please share below. The author reads every comment diligently. Subscribe if you're new here, as such discussions are regular on this platform. See you next time.